Magically, after my wallet felt a little bit lighter today and a couple dollars got spread out here and there, I have a brand new Tier 8 Premium in my garage known as the AMX Canon d'Assault. Now, what is good about this tank and what is bad? Well, obviously, in today's video, I'm going to be doing a full down take review on this tank. I bought it so you guys did not have to, so I can tell you how it plays, how to take it out if you do go up against one, and if it is worth your money and worthwhile to try and get your hands on this tank. And I can tell you right now, no, do not try and get your hands on this vehicle. The statistical chance of getting this tank is actually lower than the statistical chance of a 5% normal flat-out drop chance. And the reason behind that is down to the way Wargaming put it into lockboxes. Now, the lockboxes themselves, I don't think are actually terrible. If you got these $10 bundles here where you can get the 5 lockbox keys, I don't think it's bad. I mean, you can easily get your hands on a vehicle like the AMX 1357 if you wanted that tank for 20 bucks. It's not a bad deal, and I really like the 1357, as many of you know. You can also get your hands on the AMX 31 or prototype for another probably 10-15 bucks. So if you wanted to get a tier 7 and tier 9 for probably around $35-40, and they're pretty strong and super fun tanks, yeah, this is not bad. The issue is those two tanks added up plus the AMX M4 are around 82% chance of dropping, which means to get your hands on the Canon d'Assault, you got to get the other 18%. And not only that, but on average, you're going to get around 15 charms, because to get 20, it's a 5.54, to get 30, it's 4.43. So on average, you're going to have to open around 8 crates of just getting the Canon d'Assault charms to get the vehicle guaranteed. So 8 times you have to land on just getting certificates for this vehicle. Not only do you have to land on it 8 times, but that means you have to get it 8 times, plus get past all of this over here. So statistically, you got about a 1% chance to actually get your hands on this vehicle with, I would say, $100. $200, maybe about a 10% chance. I really wouldn't suggest you get your hands on it. These are just guesses on the numbers here, but yeah, it cost me about 140 bucks, and I got very, very lucky. I'm going to be honest. Please do not waste your money thinking that you're going to get your hands on this vehicle. However, now that we've got that out of the way, let's get on to the actual review of this tank, starting off with the statistics. So, the gun, it's got some good and some really, really bad. The good is aiming time. Dispersion is very good at .308. This is literally the AMX 30B gun, just brought down the tier 8. Unfortunately, just like the AMX 30B in tier 10, this also boasts terrible DPM for a tier 8 tank destroyer at 2442 base. Now, before I give any of you a heart attack, I am running calibrated shells, so you can get it up to around 2630. But yeah, 2630, I mean, that's not impressive at all for a tier 8 tank destroyer. The AMX AC-48 is known as one of the worst DPM TDs in tier 8, and this vehicle is very comparable to what is the Canon d'Assault. So yeah, I'm not very impressed with the DPM. The Canon Jagdpanzer is way more, about 200 more damage per minute. Not to mention a hidden statistic, or actually a couple hidden statistics you guys do not see on paper here, is the on-movement dispersion. It's a hidden way that Wargaming likes to balance vehicles. And oh boy, they slapped a terrible on-movement dispersion value on this vehicle here. Now you might be asking, well, what is on-movement dispersion? How does it work? Basically, when you move the gun on this vehicle, when you move the tank, or when you turn it, your dispersion values bloom. So even though your aiming time and dispersion base are very good, unfortunately, you have to constantly aim in every time you move the vehicle. Compare that to a tank like the Progetto 46 that every time you move it just barely blooms on the aiming time. That means that you don't actually have to aim in much to snap your shells. This tank, well, you're going to see on some of the replays we go over, it really just does struggle to pen those shots if you don't aim in. Now, I will say on penetration, it's fantastic at 273 on the standard, and if you're running Cali, it's 341 on the heat, enough to butter through even a mil 1 turret every day. So don't need to worry about that. E75's butter. So great penetration. Average damage is very nice, the same as tier 10 mediums at 350 on the standard and 300 on the heat with a 440 HE as well. Very, very nice. 8 degrees of gun depression makes it very flexible on any terrain. And when we take a look at the mobility, this is by far the fastest tier 8 tank destroyer in the game now at a power to weight ratio of 29.1. Sure, there are other vehicles that can go 55, or even some of them that can probably go 60, but this tank's power to weight ratio makes it literally like an AMX CDC. It's just as fast as light tanks. Unfortunately, its top speed is a bit slower at 50, but it's still very mobile at 50 forwards and 20 in reverse, with a very good traverse speed as well at 47.81. When we take a look at the final parts of this vehicle being the armor, you might think, looking at it on paper here, that it's not great, but actually it's very good. I mean, this is 255 millimeters of pen with calibrated aiming at it. Actually, the upper plate is great. It's 230 millimeters base, and you can see up here it's also about 185. That means if you're fully hull down, yeah, this vehicle can be very tricky to pen. All of these are auto ricochets, so if you've got tanks that shoot AP or APCR, they're going to auto ricochet all over this vehicle when it uses its full gun depression. However, when you load in heat, yeah, you're going to cut through it. 270 millimeters thick, not great. Vehicles like the IS-5, the IS-2, and other tier 8 heavies that have Cali on will pen your upper superstructure. And as well, this part here is the weakest at 232. So if you want to pen this tank, you need to shoot at this bar right here. This is your only chance of penning the vehicle. But thankfully, it is quite an easy shot, as you can see. As well, you can pen this entire bar up here. So if you aim off to this side, as long as it's not hidden, you're going to have a very easy chance of penning the tank. As you can see in Armor Inspector, you just aim anywhere around this area, and you're going to pen a majority of the time. Make sure you do not hit that mantlet, though, as that is a very, very troll mantlet. Now, if you're using this vehicle correctly, you want to angle it like this and try and hide this part of the tank. You know, you want to hide all this, but really, realistically, it's very hard to hide that. If you know where to shoot this vehicle, you're going to pen 99% of the time. You just shoot right here. As well, the edges are very weak. 256, yeah, pretty strong there, until you realize how weak that track wheel is. If we take a look just with standard ammo, yeah, that's 150. So if you actually have the track wheel on this tank, go for it. Even at an angle like this, it's only about 215 thick. It's because it's the same sides as basically like an AMX CDC at 50 millimeters thick. So shoot at the sides of the tracks. Even at an angle here, you'll pen almost every single time. Not only that, but you're going to track the vehicle in position. So very easy way to take it out. Has a super weak lower plate at 96 millimeters, but a very troll lower plate, which you can see even with heat is like 280 thick. So it's a very troll tank. What I like to make you think of when you aim at this vehicle is sort of like a Ho-Ri. That's very similar to what the armor profile is like. So let's get into the first game here. We got a tier 8 game, which is very strong. I have not played tier 9s in it yet because I've only played about 10 games in the vehicle, but I wanted to use replays because these are the two best games I've played in the vehicle yet. And I don't know what I have to say about the tank. I would say that I don't love it. I'll be honest, I don't love it. The issue is, sure, the armor's great. You saw the armor, hull down is fantastic. You've got to load premium to pen it. But that is fully hull down. For any tier 8 that is not looking at you fully hull down, they're going to pen with standard ammo most of the time. Not to mention, this vehicle does not have a lot of hit points. Because it is a tank destroyer, it's only got 1,219. So yeah, that's a bit of an issue. 3 heavy tank shells from your average 122 millimeter, which does 400 damage a hit, and you're dead. I mean, that's really, really poor. You do not want to be hit by tank destroyers. I mean, one shot from an ISU, and that's literally half of your health. So that's not great. It's really not fantastic at all. So that's one of the issues. You'll notice here, as I did say, you got to constantly aim in. So every time you shoot, you're going to notice it takes a little bit of time to aim in, but it's not terrible. It's not like you're going to hate this tank's gun. It is a very nice gun, and if you're using it like I did there at the back of the map, you'll do pretty well. What I would suggest to do on a playstyle is stay in the back of the map at the beginning, and then once the enemy has started to dwindle out, and you've got some nice shells in here and there, that's when you can start to push this vehicle quite aggressive. That's at least what I've noticed, because yeah, realistically, the armor just doesn't work too well. I mean, a smasher here, he's just going to shoot an HE shell at me and still take 400 off. And that's literally on one of the strongest parts of my armor. I'm lucky he didn't shoot a heat shell there, as that literally would have been half of my health. So there you go, nice shot into the smasher, but because my DPM is actually so atrocious, I'm actually worried about not even being able to get out a second shell before losing literally 2/3 of my health here. So I'm going to let this T25 AT poke, and I'm going to try and bait a shell from this guy. There you go, completely misses it. That's your average smasher player for you, isn't it? Hopefully this T20, oh yeah, that T25 did not bend that shell, but thankfully we're going to get a shell finishing off the smasher. There you go, and he is dead. We're now sitting at 1,700 damage, and we got a couple opponents left. left. So this game, it's going pretty well. I mean, you can see him using that fantastic mobility to get into position. We've got vehicles like the Black Prince out in the open here. We got the Challenger. We got the Charioteer. Let's get a nice lucky max roll into the side of that Black Prince. And with that, now we're sitting at 2,200 damage. But as you can see, and as I did say, the side armor on this tank is not amazing. Anytime you expose the sides, just expect to be pinned. I mean, if you're dealing with more than one tank at a time, it's going to be very, very tricky. I actually like to play this thing up against mediums when I do end up pushing it aggressive, just because mediums obviously have much less penetration. Even with their premium, they're going to struggle a heck of a lot more to deal with this tank. So now we're sitting at 2,853 damage dealt. We're at 531 health, but unfortunately, we've only blocked 300 damage. So, yeah, not great on the armor blocked, really. Not great at all. We're going to load in an HE shell, finish off the Chieftain. There you go. Nice tap for 371. And with that, all we got left is the Charioteer. Speed is key. Let us go. Come on. Go, go, go. And kaboom. Thank you very much for your hit points. There you go. First game, pretty strong. 3,800 damage. I was able to use that mobility, use the armor, at least try to use the armor. And, yeah, at least the DPM, while it's not great, is enough that you're still not going to feel like you're bad, right? The average heavy in Tier 8 has around 2,000 DPM. The average medium has around 2,400. And the fact that this thing has a lot of armor actually makes the DPM not seem terrible. But at the same time, and here's the issue with the tank, why drive this tank when you can drive a WZ-120? It's got very similar camouflage rating. Its DPM is more, a lot more at that, about 10% more. Not only that, it's got more penetration on the standard. Its heat is exactly the same. It has 50 more damage a shot and practically the same reload of around 8.25 seconds instead of the 8 seconds that this vehicle has if you're running gun rammer. So, yeah. I mean, the armor on the WZ-120, as we know, is much better on the upper plate. It doesn't have as much gun depression, sitting at 6 degrees, but who cares? I mean, when you've got more armor, you've got the ability to play more aggressive, and you've got more alpha, which means you can actually trade better. I just don't get why you'd want to play this tank. I mean, the Canonian Jagdpanzer I get, because that gun is a Leopard gun. It's got better dispersion than this tank. It's got better on-movement dispersion, better aiming time, more DPM, and the tank is meant to stay at the back of the map. This vehicle, it sacrifices that dispersion, it sacrifices that aiming time, and the DPM so that you can play it a little bit more aggressive, use that armor. But what's the point of using that armor when you can have a better tank that does it more efficiently? That's the issue I have, and even when you try and use the armor, I mean, this was the last game I played in the tank. This is the game that I starred. And you're going to notice, I don't like pushing this thing aggressive. I really don't, because it just doesn't seem like you get many bounces. I try to get bounces in it, but one thing you got to realize about this tank is you have to use the gun depression. In most cases, and I'll go back to the armor really quick here, but in most case scenarios, this tank is very low down, as we know, so it's more like this. This is what you're being looked at. It's more like that. So actually, your armor is only about 190 to 160 on the upper plate, because it's a very short vehicle. I mean, you can clearly see that here. So when you actually aim at the tank, most of the time you're aiming down on it, especially when it comes to your average heavy. So you can see I've specifically positioned my tank in this uphill spot here. So I am above the enemy, and if they're trying to shoot at my weak spots, they're going to have to aim on my upper plate. Here we go. We got an Emil 2 over here, aiming in. Nice tap for 337. And that was a good example. You can see that my aiming time is not great. Again, here we go, aiming, and unfortunately that shell didn't even hit. I mean, the aiming time is kind of annoying. If you do need the snapshots, chances are you might not hit your shells in this tank. So, yeah, kind of a pain in the booty there. But so far, we're not doing great. We're at 1,387 damage, but thankfully, the battle has just begun. It's been about 2 minutes here, and I'm just kind of chilling. We're looking at the enemy here. We got the Emil 2, we got the SU-130, we got a Hori. That guy, he was just about to poke it, but he caught himself. Smart on him. But thankfully, we're going to load in a heat shell, wait for my aiming circle to bloom in there, and boom, another nice tap in. We're sitting at 1,735 damage. I do like the damage per shot. 350, as I said for like my turtle review, while I think the turtle is an absolute pile of dog trash, the gun on the turtle is actually pretty nice. I like the ability to continue firing. A vehicle that has 400 damage per shot, you know, especially the IS series tanks, they just feel like their reloads are really long, and oh, that shell got me angry. But yeah, it just feels like your reload is longer, and you can't ever get out those second shells. This tank, if you're in an engagement, sure, your DPM might be worse than a vehicle like the WZ-120, but even then, you still do out-reload it if you are running gun rammer, and that tank is running gun rammer. So it does feel nice that you get the shell out sooner. You can pump out shells, and you can back in the cover before a lot of 400 damage per shot tanks are able to, even if you have a little bit less DPM, and especially when it comes to heavies. I mean, you're still out DPMing them, 30% more, so you're still pretty strong there. We're at 2,800 damage dealt so far, letting that Ho-Ri get past me. I want to finish off this IS, so boom, he's dead. This Ho-Ri is going to be taken out, of course, by my Vickers, who hasn't really moved much this game, but you know what? He's doing his job. Again, I'm trying to use that gun depression here, trying to get a bounce, but yeah, he just cuts right through, as you can see, my superstructure. So again, the armor just doesn't seem to work. I mean, this game, I got penned twice, and those 2 pens brought me down to 381 health. Armor, it's really not crazy. It is not crazy at all. So here we go. All we got left is the Conqueror, and obviously I'm going to try and get some shells into his tank. There you go. Waited for that aiming time just a teeny bit. And now we got one final shell. I'm going to load it in HE because of this HE being, ooh, so nice. And a fire. Boom. Speaking of fires, 467 damage with one. And there you go, 3,702. So this is the Canon d'Assault. I can definitely tell you from the 2 masteries I was able to pull out with just 3,700 and 3,800 damage, people are not doing well in this tank. And I can't blame them. I mean, from the games I've played in it, I'm not actually doing amazing. My average win rate so far is 72% with 2,573 average. And sure, I know that is very, very strong. But just to put in a comparison for my German TD on the same counterpart, this is the Canon Jagdpanzer, which I'm sitting at a 78% with 2,400. So, obviously, I'm going to play more games of the tank and see if my opinion changes. Maybe I'll make a community post or something like that. But for now, I don't think the tank is bad, but it's definitely not what I wanted it to be. It's just kind of meh. So, let me know what you guys think about it in the comments down below. Hopefully, all of you enjoyed today's video, and I'll be seeing you in the next one. Bye-bye!